What if we lived in a world with only 2 dimensions? Imagine waking up one day and discovering that your entire universe was as flat as a piece of paper. No up, no down, just forward, backward, left, and right. It might sound like the premise of a science fiction novel, but it's actually a fascinating thought experiment that can help us understand the very fabric of reality. So, buckle up, because today we're peeling back the layers of dimensions to explore a world that's flat as a pancake, literally. First, let's dive into the basics. Dimensions are essentially the different directions in which we can move or measure things. In our everyday life, we experience 3 spatial dimensions: length, width, and height. Add in the 4th dimension, time, and you've got the framework for our reality. But what would happen if we took away one of those spatial dimensions? Welcome to the 2D universe, also known as Flatland. In this universe, there's no such thing as up or down. Imagine you're a stick figure drawn on a piece of paper. You can move along the surface of the paper, but you can't lift yourself off it. That's the concept of living in 2 dimensions. But wait, how would that even work? Well, in a strictly 2D world, your body would be immensely different. You wouldn't be a 3-dimensional being anymore. Instead, you'd be a collection of flat lines or shapes. Think circles, triangles, or squares. Forget organs, muscles, and bones. Your existence would be defined by your outline. Interacting with others would be equally bizarre. For example, in the 2D universe, you wouldn't have a face. So, how would you communicate? One idea is that 2D beings might use vibrations or shifts in color along their edges to interact. Kind of like how we use facial expressions or body language, only in a much simpler, flat manner. Now here's where it gets weirder. In a 2D world, you wouldn't be able to see things the way you do now. Why? Because seeing requires light, and light in our world spreads out in 3 dimensions. But in Flatland, light would only propagate in 2 dimensions. As a result, you'd view the world as a series of lines, kind of like looking at your surroundings through a very peculiar slit. Depth perception? Forget about it. Everything would appear flat and distorted. So, what about the laws of physics? Would gravity exist in a 2D universe? Surprisingly, the answer is yes, but it would behave very differently. In our 3D world, gravity pulls objects toward the center of a mass. But in a 2D world, gravity would likely function as a linear force. Instead of pulling things down, it could pull objects toward a line. This would make celestial bodies like planets and stars impossible to form as we know them. Space itself would look nothing like what we see in pictures from NASA. Speaking of space, let's talk about movement. In our 3D world, if you encounter an obstacle, you can simply go around or climb over it. Not so in Flatland. If a wall blocks your path, that's it. You're stuck. There's no up to climb over, just endless frustration. Imagine a 2D version of a maze. Once you're in, finding your way out would be significantly harder than in 3 dimensions. But what about biology, you might ask? Could life even exist in 2 dimensions? Surprisingly, some scientists believe it's theoretically possible. For instance, cellular life might not require 3 dimensions to function. Instead, cells could evolve to perform all essential tasks in a flat environment. Imagine living organisms made of networks of lines or shapes that constantly shift and adapt within the constraints of 2D physics. But here's a mind-bending thought. What if a 3-dimensional being, like you, tried to interact with this 2D universe? To the flat beings of Flatland, your existence would be inconceivably strange. If you tried to touch their world, they would only see a cross-section of you, just a line appearing out of nowhere. This concept was famously explored in Edwin Abbott's book, Flatland, where a 3D sphere visits a 2D world and blows everyone's mind. Now let's flip the script. Imagine 4D beings looking at us right now. Just as we would appear as incomprehensible cross-sections to 2D beings, 4D entities would blow our minds in ways we can't even begin to fathom. But back to Flatland. Would it be fun to live there? It depends. On the one hand, a 2D world is much simpler. No stairs to climb, no falling off cliffs. On the other hand, you'd lose the richness of our 3D existence. No hugs, no skyscrapers, no clouds in the sky, or even a sky at all. And forget about food as you know it. Eating in 2 dimensions would probably involve absorbing nutrients through your edges, which doesn't sound particularly appetizing, does it? Here's another brain teaser for you. What if you tried to bring a 3D object into a 2D realm? Imagine taking an apple and passing it through the flat sheet of Flatland. To the 2D beings, the apple wouldn't appear as an apple. Instead, they'd see a series of shapes, a dot, then a circle that grows larger, and finally a shrinking circle until it disappears. To them, it would look like some sort of strange, magical phenomenon. So, why even think about a 2D universe? Well, exploring this concept helps scientists and philosophers tackle big questions about reality and higher dimensions. Could our 3D universe just be a shadow or projection of a higher dimensional existence? String theory, for example, suggests that additional dimensions might exist even if we can't perceive them. Thinking about 2D worlds can also help us understand how different rules of physics might apply in alternate realities. Now, here comes the kicker. What if we could someday interact with a 2D universe, or even create one? For example, advances in technology like quantum computing and holography might allow us to simulate 2D realities. Would we become like gods to the beings there? Would they even recognize us? Or would they dismiss us as a strange illusion they can't comprehend? Mind officially blown, right? At the end of the day, pondering life in a 2D universe is less about escaping reality and more about stretching the boundaries of imagination. It reminds us that our understanding of the universe is always evolving, and there's so much more to discover. So, the next time you look at a simple sheet of paper, think about the extraordinary possibilities it represents. A window into a world where everything is flat, yet infinitely fascinating. And who knows? Maybe one day we'll uncover dimensions beyond our wildest dreams. Until then, stay curious. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more fascinating what-if facts.